Don't cry, miss. You can borrow my dad. The little girl's voice echoed in front of the CEO, who sat alone at Loring Park on Christmas Eve. Snow had begun to fall softly that afternoon, each flake drifting down onto the quiet park like a thin layer of dust settling over memories time had long forgotten. Only 1 week remained until Christmas, and all of Minneapolis was glowing with holiday cheer. Windows flickered in red and green. Carols floated out from distant shops, as if the whole city were trying to wrap its arms around itself for warmth. But here, beside the frozen lake, where children had once skated with carefree laughter years ago, everything was unbearably still. Audrey Whitestone sat alone on the cold iron bench. Her gray wool coat was buttoned all the way up to her neck. A cashmere scarf was wrapped neatly, the way someone who always had to maintain a flawless appearance would wear it. Even the leather gloves on her hands couldn't stop the cold from seeping into every knuckle. Next to her lay a gift box, carefully wrapped in silver paper and tied with a white ribbon. A gift from the board of directors, a luxurious watch marking 10 years of service. Something that should have been a symbol of pride. But it warmed nothing. Her eyes were red, though she wasn't crying. She didn't cry anymore. Not since she was 9 years old, sitting in an orphanage on Christmas Eve, waiting for someone, anyone, to choose her. But no one did. Too small, the social worker had said, not cruelly, just plainly, like stating an unavoidable fact. Too fragile. So she stopped waiting. And years later, even after she built everything with her own hands, her tech empire, her penthouse, the admiration of an entire industry, she still couldn't stop herself from returning to the image of the little girl on that stone bench, quietly hoping for a miracle that would never come. This year, the feeling was even worse, as if her success had grown too big, too loud, while she herself had become smaller inside the shadow of it. If you're watching this far, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next part of this story. And what sent a chill down my spine was, who exactly was that little girl? And why did that innocent sentence strike straight into the wound Audrey had spent her entire life trying to bury? A laugh rang out somewhere in the park. Audrey lifted her head slightly. On the snow-covered path, 2 figures were walking slowly. A man in a thick flannel coat, his slightly wavy brown hair tousled under a knit beanie. Beside him was a little girl in a puffy winter jacket, wearing a hat with 2 tiny bare ears. She clutched a paper bag, its sides creased with oil stains and the faint warmth still lingering inside. They stopped near a bench across from Audrey. The man bent down, pulled out carefully wrapped cookies, and gently handed them to another man who was huddled beneath a torn blanket. He smiled, said something soft, something barely audible, and then they continued walking. Audrey lowered her gaze to the gift box beside her. Still unopened, still meaningless. Daddy. She looked sad. The little girl's voice was soft, curious. Audrey looked up and saw her staring, a tiny gloved hand tugging lightly at her father's coat. He followed her gaze, and hesitation flickered across his face. He whispered something to his daughter and tried to guide her away gently. But the little girl slipped from his grasp with surprising grace. She walked toward Audrey, her small boots crunched on the snow. She tilted her head, looking up as if trying to read something written on the face of the woman sitting alone in the cold. "Don't cry, miss," the little girl said. "You can borrow my dad." The words hit Audrey like a gust of wind straight to her chest. Sudden, pure, impossible to brace for. She stared at the girl, stunned, unsure how to respond. She couldn't even remember the last time someone had spoken to her like that. Not from pity. Not out of politeness. Not to impress. Just simply noticing. The man hurried over, his cheeks flushed from both cold and embarrassment. "I'm so sorry. She's very friendly." But he didn't pull the girl away. Instead, he reached into his pocket, took out a cookie wrapped in parchment, and offered it to Audrey with a shy, uncertain smile. "Merry Christmas," he said. "It might be sweeter than necessary, kind of like holly." Audrey looked at him. This time, she really looked. His eyes were tired but kind. His hands, slightly red from the cold, held the cookie as if offering something valuable. His voice carried no pity, no awkward hesitation, only a natural, gentle warmth. She reached out to take the cookie and nodded. Her fingertips brushed his, just barely. They trembled, and not from the cold. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded, then turned to lead Holly away. But the little girl lingered, waving as if they had known each other for a very long time. "My dad is very nice," Holly said, her smile shining like one of the rare lights that pierce a winter night. "You'll feel better if you finish the cookie." Then the father and daughter disappeared down the snowy path. Holly's voice floated back through the dark, chattering about gingerbread and Christmas lights. Audrey remained still. The cookie lay in her hand. It was heavier than the gift box, and far more real. Ryan was getting ready to take Holly home when a voice called from behind. Gentle, uncertain. "Is there anywhere nearby? I mean, somewhere I could buy you both a hot chocolate?" He turned. Audrey was standing where they had just walked away from. The cookie, half-eaten, rested in her gloved hand. The gift box tucked under her arm. Her expression was difficult to read, hesitant, guarded, almost shy. Ryan hesitated, but before he could answer, Holly lit up as if this was the question she had been waiting her whole life to respond to. "Yes, miss. There's a very cozy cafe right near the Walker Art Center." The cafe was tucked behind a bookstore and a flower shop. Warm yellow light spilled from its windows, the glass foggy from the heat inside. A slightly crooked wreath hung above the door. Through the window, shelves of pastries and rows of cinnamon sticks lined the counter, neat and inviting. They stepped in. The scent of cloves, cocoa, and pine wrapped around them like a soft scarf. Holly darted to a corner table near a small fireplace, as if afraid the warmth would disappear if she didn't claim it quickly. Ryan and Audrey followed more slowly. They sat down. Audrey across from Ryan, Holly next to her father. The fire crackled steadily beside them. Outside, snow continued to fall, quiet as a whispered lullaby. Holly leaned forward, so excited she nearly forgot to breathe. "We have a Christmas tree at home. It's only 1 meter tall, but it has real candy canes, and I made the star from cardboard and glitter." "That sounds magical," Audrey said softly. Ryan smiled, opened his bag, and took out a silver thermos. "I usually bring this for Holly after we finish giving out cookies around the neighborhood." He poured thick, steaming hot chocolate into 2 paper cups. One for Holly. The other he handed to Audrey. She accepted it. Her fingertips brushed his again. "It's been a long time since anyone poured something warm for me." Ryan didn't ask why. He simply smiled, as though accepting the statement as a truth deserving respect. Holly is terrible at ignoring people who look sad. She gets that from her dad. Audrey nodded faintly and looked down at her cup. The steam rose gently, like a breath in the cold. Across from her, Ryan wiped a smear of chocolate from Holly's chin with a tissue. He laughed at something she whispered, leaning down to hear her better. Audrey realized she was watching them, not out of curiosity, but because of something quieter, something closer to longing. There was nothing performative about Ryan, no forced cheer, only steady warmth. He seemed like the kind of person who took whatever he had and turned it into enough. The soft table lamp cast a glow on his face. The strands of light brown hair glimmered against the warm light. In that moment, he looked like he belonged to a peaceful story she had forgotten how to read. Holly turned to her, tilting her head like a tiny interviewer. "Do you have a Christmas tree?" Audrey blinked. "A Christmas tree? I only have the one at the office. Not sure it counts." Ryan looked at her gently. "Every tree counts, as long as someone looks at it with belief." There was something in his tone, simple, humble, sincere, that touched a tender place she thought she had locked away long ago. And for the first time in many years, she smiled. Not the polite smile she used in boardrooms or in front of interview cameras, but a real one. Small, fragile, honest. Holly beamed as if she had just won the greatest victory of her life. "You look prettier when you smile." Audrey let out a quiet laugh. "I'll try to remember that." They sat like that for a long while, talking, sipping cocoa, watching the fire dance. Ryan didn't ask what she did for a living. Holly didn't ask why she was sad. And Audrey didn't ask why two people with so little warmth to spare had chosen to share it with a stranger. But something inside her, something frozen for far too long, began to move. She still didn't know their full names, but she knew this night would stay with her. Perhaps longer than any gift ever could. The living room was quiet, with only the ticking of the clock and the occasional rustle of turning pages. Ryan sat cross-legged on the rug. Outside, snow was beginning to gather along the railing of the small balcony. Inside it was warm, filled with the scent of cinnamon and printer ink. He was working late again. He was preparing a proposal for an interactive children's theater program he hoped to launch in the new year.